In terms of cost for outcome, my favorite biohack, $10 or under biohack is...
J-Rock, you know we have guests that are incredibly knowledgeable. We're very blessed. But today, we are truly blessed. We have a man that has truly changed Dana White's life from his own mouth. This man in front of me right now is changing many other lives. He's got the list of clients. Mr. Gary Brecka, welcome to the show.
I'm psyched to be here, man. And
Welcome.
this place is unbelievable. You know, you built something really special here.
Well, finally got you through the doors, and now we've got you on the podcast. I was on Gary's podcast earlier. I didn't realize I was mumbling on more than I was, but typical Flex Lewis. I managed to
get him going. You get him going.
He does bang a few U-turns, you know? He will bang a U-turn.
But I try to always bring the U-turn back.
You should see us when we're working out at the gym. We're everywhere.
Well, Gary, listen, we're privileged to have you here today. There's a lot of fans that are excited to hear some knowledge bombs drop today. Sure. Obviously, we have a vast and diverse amount of followers from the bodybuilding community, MMA community, and anybody who's really into fitness. Mm-hmm. So we could really go in any different direction. I've got notes on pretty much anything, but one of the beautiful things about speaking to you over, well, the last several hours, you are a vast knowledge of again, you are a man with vast knowledge, and a small conversation with you gets taken into so many different directions, and the facts that you know and studies that just pop up to your brain, it's just truly blow my mind.
Like you said, people are excited. I was one of those people excited to get him on the show. I was like, can't wait to ask him a bunch of questions.
I was segueing onto that. Yeah, this man right here, when I said that we were doing this podcast, he was like, bro, you know I've been sending you stuff on God. I said, I know.
I was Gary.
Because I'm always telling him.
Cool, you know?
Yeah.
Because we all, you know, like a lot of health food, specifically like in the bodybuilding, health and wellness, like you see all those protein bars and all those different pieces and all the poisons in them.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's like these are being pushed to the healthiest people, and it's just filled with poisons.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and that's a core competency of mine, and one of the core messages that I preach. You know, my message is really for the masses. You know, I'm trying not to be the, you know, ultra woke biohacker that just is talking to other ultra woke biohackers, maybe just trying to impress you with how smart I am. But the truth is, it's about getting a message to the masses, and one of them is about, you know, our food supply, and aside from going down the rabbit hole of the corruption in our food supply, which there's an enormous...
We might go down that rabbit hole.
Well, if you want, I mean...
We might go down there.
All right. I mean, if you're
needs to be exposed.
Conspiracy theory types like me, then...
It's not a conspiracy when it turns out to be true.
This is true. This is true. You know, and you know, the all the way from, you know, tobacco companies' acquisition of food companies, and food companies' influence on our National Institute of Health and on our Food and Drug Administration, and the amount of research and nutritional funding that comes from, you know, big food and big pharma. And you think about the objectives of big food and big pharma, that, you know, it's to increase yield, not necessarily to increase nutritional content. And so in the United States, you know, we've gone through a revolution, a pandemic, if you will, of, you know, agricultural outcomes being pointed at yield and not really at nutrition. And, you know, we genetically modify more of our foods in the United States than any other civilized nation in the world. And most people will tell you, well, genetically modifying foods doesn't harm you, because the studies done by the GMO food companies say that they don't harm you. But the truth is, there's a difference between not doing harm and actually nutrifying the body. You know, I mean, you look at the, you know, United States is the largest spender of healthcare worldwide. We spend $4.5 trillion a year on healthcare. You would think we'd be the healthiest nation in the world since we spend that kind of money. But the truth is, we lead the world in 6 things: morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, multiple chronic diseases in a single biome, maternal mortality, infant mortality, and the lowest life expectancy at birth. And it's astounding when you think a country as civilized as we are, that spends $4.5 trillion a year on healthcare, has the lowest life expectancy at birth, but we do. In fact, we're one of the few civilized nations in the world whose life expectancy is, for the first time in 100 years, going backwards. So we know that spending doesn't equate to outcomes. right? And we wonder why we have this pandemic of chronic disease, but we don't actually have a pandemic of chronic disease happening to us. We have a pandemic of chronic disease happening within us. The toxic soup that we bathe our cellular biology in every single day, that's just become so commonplace, processed foods, seed oils, those sorts of things that are really not natural, adding folic acid to our food supply. You and I talked about this earlier. One of my big soapboxes is about using synthetic chemicals like folic acid in all of our grains, all of our flour, all of our rice, all of our pasta, and cereals of any kind in the United States are by law sprayed with the chemical folic acid, right? We don't call it sprayed with folic acid. We call it fortified or enriched. Right, so foods that are fortified or enriched have been sprayed with this chemical folic acid. And I say chemical because folic acid is not a natural vitamin. It's not vitamin B9. We make it in a laboratory. It's synthetic. You can't find folic acid anywhere on the surface of the earth. And yet, even though it is not a natural compound like folate, which you can find in green leafy vegetables and all kinds of food sources, steak, we spray this synthetic chemical on our food supply, and you look at the incidence of ADD, ADHD, OCD, manic depression, bipolar, autism, these skyrocketing rates of these pro-inflammatory conditions on the backs of adding these synthetic compounds to our food supply.
Add in, another 32 vaccines on top of that.
9 now, if you have a full vaccine schedule, right? It was down less than 15 in the 70s. And, and some of these vaccines are, I'm not anti-vaccine, but we used to define a vaccine as something that prevented the infection and the spread. Now we don't even prevent the infection or the spread, and we still call it a vaccine. And we used to make vaccines out of what's called attenuated viruses, where we'd actually take a virus, which is a non-living thing. It's DNA inside of what's called an envelope. And what we used to do is we used to go into this virus, polio, for example, and we would take out the DNA. We would attenuate the virus. And the protein coating, this nucleocapsid protein on the virus was still there, and we would put this into your body. And since it didn't have DNA, it couldn't infect you, right? A virus kind of works like the zombie apocalypse, right? It's not a living thing, but it goes up and attaches to a living cell, and it injects its DNA into that cell and takes over that cellular metabolism, right? It can't live on its own. I mean, a virus, laying out here on the table is harmless until it actually gets into your body and infects the cell. So what we would do is we would take out the DNA, we would put these into the bloodstream. It wasn't capable of infecting you, but it could solicit an immune response. Your body would see that, manufacture an antibody to it, and you would have antibodies to that virus, but the DNA wasn't there. And then, a few years ago, we decided that we could actually make these vaccines out of messenger RNA. And I don't think really the public at large really understood what that meant. We're taking a synthetic copy of a message from our DNA. So if you actually look inside of a cell and you find the nucleus of a cell, inside the nucleus is the DNA, right? This twisted ladder. That's the boss. That's the CEO. The DNA is running the show. And it has 2 roles. It has one to replicate, to make an exact copy of itself. But the other role of DNA, and a lot of people are unaware of this, is that DNA writes messages into the cell. It gives instructions to the cell, right? These are called mRNA, messenger ribonucleic acid. So if I was the DNA and you guys were cell minions, I would say, hey, you go make this protein, you throw this nutrient out, you bring this nutrient in. These messages go out from the nucleus into the cytoplasm of the cell, and they give the commands to the troops. Well, those messages in a organic environment will last 2 to maximum 12 hours. They're organic, so it will dissolve. So if I say, go make the spike protein, and you're a cell organelle, and you go make the spike protein, when you get back to your desk, that message is gone. What we did was when we launched messenger RNA vaccines, mRNA vaccines, was we created a synthetic copy of that message. And that message we are still able to pick up 24 months after people are injected with these mRNA vaccines. And so what it does is it never turns that message off. So it says, go make the spike protein. You go make the spike protein, you get back to your desk, it says, make the spike protein, make the spike protein, make the spike protein, make the spike protein. So now you have a proliferation because the message is not degrading. And we didn't plan for this. We didn't do the long-term safety trial studies. I mean, Operation Lightspeed, was light speed to get the vaccine to market. But
it was like the fastest vaccine ever created in the history of man, right?
Wait the safety trial. So the long and short of it is none of us really know, right, what the downstream consequences are. But we know that it's causing things like diffuse vasculitis and thrombolytic thrombocytopenia and other
Carditis.
Yeah, the myocarditis, the pericarditis, the trigeminal neuralgias, the transverse myelitis. There are all these consequences that are coming from a single source, because when you inflame the lining of the vascular wall or the arterial wall, and you have 63,000 miles of blood vessel in your body, all of a sudden you're taking the largest surface area of the body, which a lot of people think is the skin. The skin has a surface area of about half a tennis court. The lining of your blood vessels has the surface area of about 6 tennis courts. So it's actually 12 times the surface area. And so when you interrupt the ability for contents, nutrients that are in the blood to leave the blood and enter the tissue, and contents that are in the tissue to leave the tissue and enter the blood, you've interrupted the exchange of the most important blood-brain barrier in human beings. And when this happens, you get this diffuse myriad of consequences that seems unrelated, but they are all related. And I don't know how we jumped onto the vaccine right out of the gate.
We went right into
politics, and we went right at it.
Let's stay on it. Let's stay on it, because like 2020, we're looking back in hindsight now and understanding. They were telling people stay inside, right? They're not getting sunlight. Wear masks. Take the vaccine. You must have been like crawling out of your skin seeing this and like in the country, and then I
got absolutely lambasted because I was telling people to take their shoes off, touch the surface of the earth, get out every morning, expose your skin to sunlight, take high doses of vitamin C and vitamin D3, cholecalciferol. I said take vitamin D3, zinc, and vitamin C, ascorbic acid. You can go to GNC. I didn't even have that product to sell at the time, and people were like, "Hey, he's just a salesman. He's a charlatan." I got called which was the one I had to look up? Oh, I got called a Trump sycophant.
It's like the words I was telling you earlier.
First of all, how do you know who I voted for? But what the hell is a sycophant?
That's like part of my vocabulary.
I was like, I gotta look that one up. And so I was a sycophant, and it was like misogynistic.
Well, then there are also online, and we know now that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook was suppressing real information about the vaccines and about healthcare and specific things, and
then condoning the people who are coming up like yourself to fight, do a different way, right? If it didn't align with the ideology, you were a conspiracist or you were XYZ.
I just believe so much more in what God gave us than what man makes us. And by that, I mean, I believe more in our ability to naturally defend ourselves, especially if you have a healthy immune system. The question is, how do I get a healthy immune system? That was the narrative that was lost, was what can I do to put myself in a position to better battle this virus? I mean, initially when the data started coming in, you looked at the survival rate was 99.7%. And then in the vaccinated, it was like 98.4%. And I go, well, why would I actually take something that reduces my survival rate just on its surface?
Yeah.
And then, the practical side of me, the human biologist in me said, I sit on the board of the NFL Alumni Association. I'm their health services director. So we treat some very, very large human beings that were former NFL players. And I'm looking at one of the nose tackles that we treated, and this guy's 6 feet 6 inches tall, probably 340 pounds, walking around. And I also have a 5-year-old niece. Right, she was 47 pounds. And I'm like, you will never convince me that these two human beings get the exact same dose of the exact same thing and have the exact same reaction. I mean, just on its surface, I'm denying that biology.
Just common sense.
Just common sense. This guy's ducking under the door jam, right? I mean, he looks like he ate a water buffalo. Right? and my 5-year-old niece is just a little girl. And I said, there's no way that her immune system has the same reaction to this. And when you look at the attention of vaccines, I think, is, I don't subscribe to the theory that somebody's sitting up there trying to kill humanity. But these are profit centers. And, if you can get a vaccine onto the schedule, right? I mean, this is an absolute win for Big Pharma, right? I mean, if I can mandate that you get a vaccine. So, for example, in every birth in America, as soon as the baby comes out of the womb, before even they hand the baby back to the mother in many cases, they're rubbing erythromycin in the eyes, and then they're giving them the hepatitis B vaccine. Well, hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease, or it's transmitted through intravenous drug use, meaning sharing needles. So it's either transmitted sexually or transmitted through IV drug use. And we also we also check the mother before the fetus is born to see if she's hepatitis B positive. So if a hepatitis B negative mother gives birth to a fetus, and the risk to this baby is sexually transmitted disease or IV drug use, I mean, what are the chances that an infant is going to be exposed to that? Zero. In fact, if you look at the incidence of hepatitis B in prepubescent teens and infants without sexually transmitted or drug use, it's zero. We're vaccinating infants against risks that don't exist. That's the issue that I have. You know, you could quantify any risk. I mean, what's the risk of dying in a motor vehicle accident on your way to school? There's a quantifiable risk to that, right? You could look at the stats, you know, across the United States and say there is some risk. Okay, well, do we stop putting kids in the car to go to school? At some point, there has to be a quantifiable risk that we're trying to prevent, right? So now you introduce to their little immune system, before they've even had breast milk, a synthetic vaccine that's causing an immune reaction to a disease that they don't have, that they weren't exposed to, fresh in the first few days of life. And we wonder why we have skyrocketing rates of autism and skyrocketing rates of attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And, you know, like when I graduated high school in 1988, I didn't know a single autistic child. Yeah. I didn't even know a family.
It's crazy.
That knew an autistic child.
Yeah.
My 16-year-old daughter now knows 10.
That's crazy.
Right? I mean, she's a sophomore in high school. She knows 10. It's a very commonplace. Oh, he's autistic. She's autistic. My friend has mild Asperger's. I'm like, what? I don't know any of these.
It's scary now. I mean, honestly, you know, my nephew has autism, and you know, I'm 43 years old. I'm in the, like, I really want to have a kid now, but it's scary. You know, it's like I got to go and do in vitro. It's like I have to go and do the science because I'm just nervous.
Yeah, well, you want to get a back to the basics approach. You know, I really like what you were saying earlier on our podcast, the podcast that we did on The Ultimate Human, because one of the questions that came in to Flex was about you know, what supplements to rely on, what pre-workouts to rely on, you know, what protein powders. And he made the comment, like, you should try to get the majority of your nutrition from whole foods. And I totally agree with that. And if you look at the science, you know, you look at the research on blue zones, for example, you know, the hypercentenarians, the people that are living the longest, there wasn't any real continuity in diets, right? The dogmatic dieting I don't subscribe to, you know, keto, paleo, pescatarian, you know, vegan, vegetarian, carnivore. It's whole foods, right? I mean, you look at the people that are living the longest on this planet, they are eating whole foods. In Sardinia, they eat high amounts of carbohydrates, but they're all non-processed carbohydrates. In the Mediterranean, they eat high amounts of olive oil, a lot of fatty fish, you know, which would fly in the face of most cardiologists' recommendation. By the way, the number one killer of cardiologists is cardiovascular disease. So let's just put that out there. You know, and then you look at like Singapore, you know, highest meat consumption in the world, one of the longest life expectancies on the planet. So what's the commonality, since there's no diet theme? The commonality is they are eating whole foods. The problem is in this country, to get to a true whole food diet, right? That's the conspiracy, right? Yeah. Is how do I actually get to grass-fed, grass-finished meats, pasture-raised eggs, free-range chicken, filtered water? How do I get around the fluoride that's in our water? Because, you know, we are micro-poisoning ourselves to death. I hear people say all the time, the dosage determines the poison. And I hate when I hear people say that, because it's not the dosage that determines the poison. It's the cumulative dosage that determines the poison. Nobody ever got mercury poisoning from a single piece of tuna fish. Yeah. Right? They got mercury poisoning from compounding it. And when you start to compound the toxic load that our cellular biology has to wade through every single day, then it's incumbent upon us to be militant about creating a filter, you know, a fence around our body, an imaginary fence, and filtering things before they get to our body.
Yeah.
Stop drinking.
I think these conversations are so important because there just hasn't been the understanding of like what's going on. I feel like, because I have these conversations sometimes with people and it's like, they look at me like I'm crazy. And that's because also, like you mentioned earlier, they utilize words like enriched or organic, and it's not really that, right? Fortified.
Enriched or fortified means sprayed with folic acid.
And it should be illegal for the FDA to misrepresent certain things within our food that we're eating. Yeah. Why would you do that?
They should use the term synthetically enhanced.
Use the terms.
You know, sprayed with synthetic folic acid, right? And look, the intention was initially good, right? The intention was to reduce the incidence of what's called neural tube defects in pregnant women because the population was folate deficient, okay? So if we rewind this entire history back to where it begins in the soil, right? You can trace 90% of all human nutrition, if not more, to the quality of our soil. So as our soil quality has declined since the 50s, and this is across all sectors, our wheat is less nutritious, if nutritious at nutrient dense at all. So are our vegetables. I mean, if you look at the amount of calcium, iron in spinach today versus the amount of calcium and iron that were and zinc and magnesium that were in spinach and green leafy vegetables 50 years ago, you'd see it's night and day. So as we become more nutrient deficient, we get the expression of disease. So we have become one of the most disease-ridden populations in the world because we are nutrient deficient. And this is one of the messages that I really try to harp on people is like, we are not as sick or diseased or as pathological as we think we are. We are nutrient deficient. In fact, can we pull that crazy slide up that I showed you earlier?
Yes.
Will your users be able
Which one?
Will they be able to see this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is called this is hydrogen studies. This is called, and there's going to be a test on this later.
All right, pay attention, Flex.
Everybody just focus on this and commit it to memory.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to ask a lot of questions about it.
Is this how to understand women?
Yeah,
Or-
this is yeah,
pretty close.
yeah,
I don't know.
close. Notice that it loops back to the beginning. Once you figure out and you get to the end, it goes back.
Goes right.
And it
back.
still says no.
Yeah, it still says no. It still says no, and it's your fault. So basically, what this is, I show this chart for one reason, is because this is a chart of what's called the methylation pathways in the body, and 300 billion times every single day of your life, 300 billion cells that were with you today will not be with you tomorrow. And what happens is this complex pathway, and this is how our genes encode how we take every raw material in the human body and convert it to the usable form. So in other words, nothing that we put into our bodies, nothing, no protein, mineral, vitamin, amino acid, nutrient of any kind gets used in the format that we put it in. Everything that we put into our bodies goes through a process of being converted into the usable form. Okay? This conversion is called methylation. Just imagine taking crude oil out of the ground. You can't put crude oil into your gas tank, right? Because the car doesn't understand that fuel source. Crude oil has to be converted to gasoline, refined, and then your car can run off of that fuel source. The same exact thing is true with human beings. This refining process is called methylation. This is a snapshot of methylation. And what I always point out on here, I don't need you to memorize it, is that look at this methylation pathway and see if you can find any chemicals, any synthetics, or any pharmaceuticals. You won't find any of those things. What you will find are vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. This is the foundation of your cellular biology. We need 91 essential minerals, we need 8 essential amino acids, and we need 2 essential fatty acids for this entire engine to run. You don't need synthetics, you don't need chemicals, you don't need pharmaceuticals. That doesn't appear anywhere on here. But what's astounding to me is that when you are deficient in certain vitamins, minerals, or amino acids, you get the expression of disease, and then we think the fix is a chemical or a synthetic or a pharmaceutical. How do you fix anything going on in this methylation pathway with any of those things? They don't even appear on here. And my point is that we have accepted such an erosion of our baseline sense of normalcy. And we don't accept the fact that we can actually be nutrient deficient and leading to the expression of disease. In fact, we've developed an entire narrative around disease traveling in families. Like if you just showed up to your cardiologist tomorrow and you had high blood pressure, they would say, Flex, we're going to do all these, we're going to do this entire cardiac workup. Your EKG is normal, your EEG is normal, your heart and lung sounds are normal, your cardiac exam is fully normal, but you have high blood pressure. It's weird. But, we see on your report that your uncle had it and your grandmother had it.
Yep.
So you have genetically inherited hypertension. You have familial hypertension. If you actually took that a step further and looked the doctor right in the eye and said, well, if I inherited hypertension from my ancestor, what gene did they pass on to me that caused this condition to exist? Their face would go blank.
Yeah.
Ditto that for hypothyroid. Ditto that for type 2 diabetes. Ditto that for drug and alcohol addiction, for depression, for anxiety, for ADD, for ADHD. Because these things run in families does not mean that we pass disease from generation to generation. What we pass from generation to generation is the inability for the body to refine a raw material.
Interesting.
which leads to a deficiency, which causes that condition.
We also have a giant machine against us,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a giant marketing machine against us. The only country in the world, or maybe one other one, that can market pharmaceuticals. I've seen so many studies on the poisons that exist in our country and are banned
In UK and many other countries.
30, 40 other countries because of, that capitalist mindset of like, well, we just want to produce more and make it at a cheaper value. Mm-hmm. But how does that get by our government? Because they're allowing things to happen. And as you went in earlier and you started talking about the vaccine, like, well, when you have somebody who's profiting from a vaccine and then now they're in the help the fix the
but you can't be sued for the
right.
consequences.
But now Pfizer's in the game of like, let's help fix the vaccine injuries, and now they have other things on that too. So they're profiting from both sides. And when you see something like that,
does it end?
How does it stop, right?
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, why did Pfizer spend $6.6 billion on Arena Pharmaceuticals, who's their competitor, who makes the antidote to diffuse
right?
vasculitis, which is caused by the vaccine? It's really astounding to me. It's advertising direct to consumer in the pharmaceutical industry is the worst return on investment in any of any type form of advertising in the world. The return on investment for advertising directly to the consumer is a horrific investment. You got to ask yourself, why would I spend a multiple of times more on advertising than I get back in revenue from the consumer actually buying my product? And the reason for that is they don't advertise direct to the consumer to draw the consumer into their product or service. They advertise direct to the consumer to control the media, because they're the largest buyers of media in the world. And so when you are 60 or 70% of a news station's budget, or you're 60, 70% of an ad station's budget or a radio station's budget, that media outlet is not going to talk ill about your product or your service, or they'll lose 70% of their marketing budget. So it's actually not done to advertise directly to the consumer. It's done to control the media budget. Because if you control the budget, then you control the narrative. Yeah. And that's just patently true. And I mean, that's just a statement of fact. It's a horrific investment. Nobody in their right mind would make this investment. That was of like sound mind and body, because the return on investment is not there. But when you can control the narrative, this is why you don't have media outlets that will speak ill of certain products or services, because they would lose their entire budget. And I think that that is one of the practices that I think would really help serve humanity. It's not to be anti-pharmaceutical, but it's not to allow one industry to control the narrative, right, especially from our independent media sources. But again, back to the message of genetically inherited disease. There's so many people that are listening to this podcast right now that either have high blood pressure, or they have a loved one suffering from high blood pressure, or they have ADD or ADHD or OCD, or they have type 2 diabetes, or they have elevated blood sugar, or they have hypothyroid, or any number of other conditions that they have been convinced they have because they inherited it from their ancestor. And I'm here to tell you that in the majority of those cases, it's patently false. Most of the time, these people are nutrient deficient. Like the big case that I got famous with was the Dana White, when he was on high blood pressure medication. And for the record, I'm not a physician. I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I did not take Dana off of his medication. A cardiologist did. And I have all the respect in the world for the people that are licensed to practice medicine. But he had been told that he had idiopathic hypertension, which is a fancy way of saying this is of unknown origin. We don't know what's causing it. Even though we can't find anything wrong with your heart, we're just going to medicate your heart anyway for a crime it didn't commit. Right. I mean, just like, when you have low thyroid, you have thyroid hormone T3. They look at your thyroid panel and they go, wow, Flex, your thyroid hormone T3 is very low. You have hypothyroid. What they're not telling you is that the thyroid only produces 20% of that hormone. So the question is, where's the rest of that 80% of that hormone come from?
And isn't that a problem with medical doctors now, right? Because they don't understand, the causes that bring people to these things. They're just giving you a pill or something to try to treat the symptom. But let's have prevention, right?
Well, so how do you prevent it? You give the body the raw material it needs to do its job. You want to see phenomenal things happen in human beings? Give their body the raw material it needs to do its job. There is no better expression than that in the bodybuilding industry. Every bodybuilder walking this earth, if they're a competitive bodybuilder, knows that if you junk in, you get junk out. You cannot put junk in and add effort. You cannot put junk in and add sleep. You cannot junk in and put hydration. You can't add junk and add great workouts. You put junk in, you're going to get junk out, right? And so this is very true with our cellular biology. And so what happens is we are looking for solutions to the toxic soup that our cellular biology is bathing in other toxic solutions. You look at the rise of Ozempic, for example, these GLP-1 inhibitors, Ozempic, tirzepatide, whether it's Wegovy or Mounjaro. GLP-1 is actually a hormone that we produce in our gut. So these GLP-1 agonists are mimicking a natural response in the body. And one of the things that GLP-1 does is it creates a satiation response. So what causes GLP-1 to rise? What causes us to be satiated? Nutrients, right? When we eat nutrient-dense foods, we get satiated earlier. When we eat highly processed foods, we don't get satiated. The brain doesn't realize that it's actually been fed. So what do? We overeat. Yeah. Right. And so the more seed oils and the more processed foods and that we put into our body, the hungrier we become. It actually flips the naturopathic satiation response on its head. And now what we do is we say, well, we can actually falsely mimic the sensation of being satiated so that people will eat less. But if they're still eating less of the same toxic nonsense that got them there in the first place, we haven't addressed the problem. There's an act working its way through Congress right now called the End All Obesity Act. And it sounds great, right? It's like
sponsored by Ozempic.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Pfizer. Pfizer's running commercials through it.
Shut up.
Yes. Bill 4818, look it up. There is a line in Bill 4818. I've heard Casey Means and Callie Means talk about this all the time, two people that are really leading this charge. In this bill, there is a few lines in there that refer to how they're going to end all obesity. And one of the things they're going to do is they're going to make tirzepatide and semaglutide covered by Medicaid and Medicare. So you bathe everybody's cellular biology in this toxic soup. Everybody gets fat and they get type 2 diabetes, or they get pre-diabetes, which 50% of the U.S. population, 171 million people, have pre-diabetes. So what is our solution? Our solution is to put chemicals and synthetics and pharmaceuticals into their body to trick their body into eating less of the toxic compounds that got them to their pre-diabetic condition in the first place. And to make it worse, the company that manufactures these semaglutides are European pharmaceutical companies. So on the backs of the taxpayer, we're going to charge the U.S. taxpayer $3 trillion to cover the 171 million people that have eaten themselves into a position where they're pre-diabetic. We're going to send that $3 trillion to Europe so that Europe can send the drugs back to the United States on the backs of our taxpayer, when it's not even a front line of defense against pre-diabetes in Europe as we stand today. You cannot use this as a front line of defense. So it's like we're the laughing stock. And the thing that I believe that we need to do is just get back to the basics. We talked about grounding earlier, taking your shoes off and touching the surface of the earth, exposing your skin to sunlight. We are so afraid of the sun now. It is pathetic. Yeah. You look at the parabolic rise in skin cancers. You can almost overlay it with the parabolic rise in the use of sunscreens. You would think that would be oxymoronic, right? If we're using more sunscreens, we should have less skin cancer. But the truth is that since 2018, 23 brands of sunscreen have been pulled from the market for actually directly causing cancer. Damn. And so we're actually trying to stand in between Mother Nature and humanity, and we are getting sicker and fatter.
It's everywhere too,
and more inflamed. Yeah,
right. Yeah. The plastics are everywhere. There's so many different things you got to pay attention to now for optimal health. Right.
Well, I think people ask me all the time, like, where would I start, Gary? Well, first I would begin eating a whole food diet. Right. If your great grandmother wouldn't recognize it, don't eat it. Just start there with that simple approach, right?
Yes, what a great
your great grandmother would be like, what the hell?
Yeah, the goulash is okay though.
No, not everything she would recognize eat, right? She knows what a cat is. A cat, okay. But and whole foods are just foods in their whole natural forms. And then I would avoid, like the plague, fortified or enriched foods, because if you are unsure whether or not you have a gene mutation called MTHFR, affectionately called the motherfucker gene. Can we say motherfucker on the podcast?
Absolutely.
got motherfucker Jones right here.
I think my producer, you've got it, right?
Yeah, I have that.
Oh, he's a motherfucker?
He is too, yeah.
Definitely a motherfucker.
In addition to having the gene, he's also a
Yeah.
motherfucker.
I keep all these motherfuckers around me.
Well, you did a podcast at a different studio that I was running,
Right.
And while we were doing the podcast, I actually submitted my information to get my DNA tested.
Awesome.
And it came back with that gene. And so you were telling me literally at that point, and I was like, "Man, this sucks."
I do want to get that test.
Should I be wearing a hazmat suit now around this guy? Or what?
Yeah,
Tell
yeah,
me,
he's
guys.
very infectious.
We need
Okay.
that test, Flex.
I think
We need that
everybody
test.
in the world should do that test once in their lifetime. And the reason why I think that you should do what's called a genetic methylation test is because you will only do this test once in your lifetime, and you will never again guess on what you need to supplement with for the balance of your lifetime, because most of us now are supplementing for the sake of supplementing. We are not supplementing for deficiency because we don't know what we're deficient in. If you look at plant biology or plant physiology, for example, if we accept this in plant physiology, like if you had a leaf rotting in a palm tree and you called a true arborist, a true botanist out to your house, they wouldn't touch the leaf. Right, they would core test the soil.
Yes, they would.
And they would say, you know what, Flex, there's no nitrogen in the soil. And they would add nitrogen to the soil and the leaf would heal. Human beings are no different. If you find the missing raw material, the deficient nutrient in the human body, and you put it back, it will thrive in ways you never thought possible. You know, if you look at hypertension, for example, you know, as a disease, 85% of all the diagnosis of high blood pressure is idiopathic, of unknown origin. Well, a lot of these people have a high amino acid in their blood called homocysteine. And the antidote, if you will, to homocysteine is another amino acid called trimethylglycine, which you can get at GNC. So you now might have high blood pressure because you have an elevated amino acid in your blood. The solution could be as simple as putting another amino acid in your blood called trimethylglycine to help your body metabolize it and naturally break it down and cause your vascular system to relax, because high levels of homocysteine constrict the vascular system, of which you have 63,000 miles. And when you start making vessels more narrow, you drive pressure up. So imagine if we could drive the pressure down simply by putting the right raw material back into the human body. Not because you lowered the pressure, but because you increased the diameter of the pipes. You can go to thyroid and say, well, if 80% of the thyroid hormone that I'm being told is low is not even made by the thyroid, it's made in the liver and the gut and the periphery through deiodinization, maybe I should check my iodine, selenium, and thiamine levels. And maybe if I supplemented with iodine, selenium, and thiamine, my thyroid would make a magic comeback, because there's actually nothing wrong with my thyroid. And you could just go through condition after condition after condition after condition. You know, we have so many mental illnesses now in this country that we define as mental illnesses: attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, impulse control disorder, anxiety. Nobody tells you what these conditions are. If you lined up 100 people that had anxiety and you said, what is anxiety? They would describe the characteristics of that condition. And if you're a listener, and chances are about 60% of your listeners have suffered from anxiety at some point in their lifetime. 40% of them have suffered from crippling anxiety. But no one's told them what it is. You know, they'll say, well, it's a sensation of feeling fear without the presence of a fear. It's the sensation of being anxious. Sometimes I feel lightheaded or tight in the chest. Okay, well, those are all the characteristics of anxiety. What anxiety is it is a rise in a very specific category of neurotransmitters called catecholamines. So if you drove home tonight and you got out of your car and somebody was standing in front of you with a knife, that you would begin to have a fight or flight response, right? Because in that fear-based response, your pupils would dilate, your heart rate would increase, your extremities would flood with blood. But what's happening? How did you have that response? You had that response because your brain dumped catecholamines into the brain. These 4 neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, epinephrine, ephedrine, and dopamine, spiked. When they spiked, you had a fight or flight response. So your fight or flight response, stimulated by the guy that was in front of you with a knife, caused a spike in catecholamines. Well, what if you're laying in your bed tonight all by yourself, and you're here in Las Vegas, and you start thinking about getting eaten by a shark? Right? You know the chances of a shark getting out of the Pacific Ocean and coming into Las Vegas, biting you in your bed, are 0. But you could have the exact same response. How is it that I can have the same response to a guy standing in front of me with a knife as to me thinking about getting eaten with a shark? Because neurochemically, they're the same thing. They're a rise in catecholamines. Once we understand that, now we understand that anxiety is not coming from a cluster of symptoms outside of our body. In fact, if you ask the majority of people that suffer from anxiety, can you always point to the trigger that causes it? They will say no. They could be on a podcast just like this and all of a sudden be overwhelmed with anxiety. They could be driving home from work on an otherwise innocuous day and be overwhelmed by anxiety. The reason why they can't tell you what's causing it is because it's not caused by their outside environment. It's caused by a rise in catecholamines. And very often, catecholamines rise because you are deficient in a B complex of vitamins.
Interesting.
Could the solution to rampant anxiety possibly be supplementing with a complex of B vitamins? Yes.
Wow.
I'm here to tell you yes, because when you can't break down catecholamines, then they rise and you get the consequences of that. You don't actually have anxiety, you have poor catecholamine regulation. And again, I could bore you to tears and go through hundreds and hundreds of these kinds of examples. What I'm trying to say is we just don't even define what's wrong with people by the actual fact pattern that's causing it, because this would allow us to get right to the root of the issue.
I'm going to slide in you from the selfish standpoint.
Yeah.
So I've had anxiety throughout the years.
And you've probably also had gut issues. I've never met anyone with anxiety that didn't also suffer from gut
Nostradamus right here. Yeah. But you pulled that out. I definitely had gut issues. And there was definitely a correlation. Now I'm looking back. Say I get a little stressed about something coming up, or I start overly thinking about something, more so of old. But there was nobody I could speak to. First of all, it's kind of part of the manhood, right? It's part of the man code. It's like, who do you speak to about anxiety? Because, I grew up, nothing like that existed.
Yeah.
Same all of us growing up. You just sucked it up. Nobody was talking about mental health or anything like that. And I'm so happy now there is there's more attention to mental health.
Right.
But anxiety kind of falls in that mix too. So what would you say athletes that are watching the show can do to control that environment, and obviously if there's any tests that can be done to try to get to that core root that you spoke about?
Well, there's a test called a genetic methylation test. I do one. You don't have to do my test. There are plenty of good genetics companies that are out there. I look at 5 very specific genes because I want to look at the 5 actionable genes in the body that are responsible for converting the majority of the nutrients in your body to the usable form. So let me give you an example. We developed a whole hypothesis around depression called the serotonin hypothesis of depression. And essentially what it says is that if you are low on serotonin, you are by definition depressed. So depression is caused by low serotonin. So then you would think that the fix would be to raise serotonin. Right? So if I'm depressed because I have low serotonin, then why don't I just raise serotonin? But that's not what we do. We take people that are low on serotonin and we put them on something called an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And at a 30,000-foot view, I'm just going to oversimplify it for a second. What an SSRI does is it blocks the uptake of serotonin by certain receptors. So what it does is it rations what little serotonin you have. So by definition, it never raises serotonin. So by definition, it never ends depression, which is why I see clients all the time. They come in to see me and I'm like, well, how long have you been on an antidepressant? They go, well, 15 years or 18 years. I go, well, when did you think it was going to kick in? Well, should we just run this another 2 years?
Yeah.
So let's rewind that back a second. Where does serotonin come from? Well, 90% of the serotonin in our bodies is right here. It's in our gut. And if you don't have it here, you can't have it here. So can depression actually begin in the gut and not in the brain? Yes. How do we make serotonin? We take an amino acid called tryptophan, the one that's famous for making us sleepy at Thanksgiving dinner. We take an amino acid called tryptophan, and the body methylates it into the neurotransmitter serotonin, 90% of which is in your gut, and then it travels up the vagus nerve into the brain and helps create mood and emotion. So if I'm deficient in the factory that produces serotonin, which is in the gut, then I'm going to be deficient in the place where it creates mood, which is in the brain. And now I get labeled with a mood disorder. And so you don't actually have a mood disorder. You have a serotonin deficiency secondary to poor methylation of tryptophan. So why don't we put tryptophan and the right complex of vitamins, specifically methylfolate, back into your body so your body can begin to produce serotonin and restore natural mood. You see, serotonin is a component of different emotional states, right? And then we say, listen, Flex, you can be in whatever mood you want to be in. You just can't use serotonin. Well, serotonin's a part of passion, elation, joy, arousal, libido, and happiness. So now any of those moods that require that neurotransmitter, you can't manufacture. So now you have a mood disorder. I'm making this up, by the way. I keep pointing at
It's
you.
okay.
By the end of the podcast, you're going to have every...
It's okay. I'm already ordering some L-tryptophan.
You got some mess. You got mental disorder. He's like, hey, buddy, take it easy on me.
Come on, Gary.
I'm not that jacked up.
You're gonna train with me after this too, so watch your words.
But I get excited about it because it's a message of hope. And I know that there are people listening to this podcast right now that suffer from mood disorders, that suffer from ADD, from ADHD, from OCD, from ruminating thoughts at night, from gut issues and anxiety. So let's just get back to the issue of the gut and anxiety. So serotonin, believe it or not, is also highly involved in gut motility. This is the most overlooked thing in all of bariatric medicine. You have to think about your intestinal tract as a 30-foot-long conveyor belt. And I know nobody wants to hear a podcast about gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and irritability, but I'm going to go into it here for 5 minutes because there are people listening right now that have had unresolved gut issues. They cannot figure it out. And they're like, they go down the food sensitivity route. They go down the food allergy route. They go down the gut microbacteria route. They do every stool test known to mankind, and everything seems to be normal. And they think they have a food allergy or food sensitivity. And when I sit with them for just a few minutes, you can very quickly realize that they actually don't have an allergy, right? I say, well, what are you allergic to? Well, I'm allergic to gluten, or I'm allergic to wheat. Okay, is there ever a time that you can eat wheat or corn and not have a reaction? Yeah, sometimes I can eat corn and I don't blow up like a tick. Okay, then you're not allergic to corn, okay? Because allergies are not transient. Allergies are consistent. The reason why you can eat the same thing on Monday and not have a reaction, and eat the exact same thing on Wednesday and blow up like a tick, or be constipated as hell, or have gas, or cramping, or bloating, or even diarrhea, the reason why you can have two completely different reactions to the same food is because it's not the food that's causing the reaction. It is the deficiency in something called methylfolate. The folate that we eat has to be converted to methylfolate in order for the body to process it. If you can't make this conversion, you have a deficiency. 44% of the population has this genetic mutation. They have this deficiency. If you don't supplement with methylfolate, you will never restore your gut motility to normal. And think of your gut as a 30-foot-long conveyor belt. You put contents on it at one end when they exit the stomach, and as it traverses the small intestine and the colon and then exits the rectum, this conveyor belt moves at a very specific speed. If you went into any factory in America that works on a conveyor belt system and you doubled the speed of the conveyor belt, or you shut the conveyor belt down, the entire factory would break down, right? And this is why you get so many issues in the gut related to the motility, to the pace of the gut. And we go after the bacteria, the food sensitivity, the food allergy. We try to figure out what is it that I'm eating that could possibly be causing this, but it doesn't seem to correlate to what we're eating. The truth is it's deficiency in a nutrient called methylfolate. The reason why I think that genetic test is so important is this will pinpoint exactly what your body cannot convert.
And that's a very interesting point, because the first time I actually heard about this test was you.
Yeah.
And for me, like I get blood work done every 3 months, right? But it's not detailed like what you're saying. For years, I take 38 vitamins a day, right? But like not having the exact information on what I might be deficient in, I'm just trying to take all the stuff that I know is going to be good for me, but probably not in the right amounts in some cases. And I would think like at birth, you'd almost have this test done and you'd know these things for your life.
Yes.
Right. It's like,
as soon as a child can chew and swallow, you should have this test done.
yeah.
Well,
Right.
And I never even heard of it before until I heard it from him.
Well, to add to that, everything you mentioned earlier about having XYZ test done, XYZ ABC, that was me.
Yeah.
I've done every single thing that you mentioned, and the food allergy test was the number one thing that popped up on above everything was mustard and mustard seed, and I was putting mustard on everything just because of the calorific value that is not in there, right? But it was amazing that every gut specialist I went to, nobody offered that test to me. It was...
And nobody talked about motility.
Motility.
Yeah.
I was getting to that. Nobody talked about that whatsoever. I got to speak to a couple of people after... I mean, I spent a lot of money. Probably close to 6 figures in trying to stay in the game with all my gut issues. And this was done over a period of probably like 7 years. And I just sucked it up. Suck it up, buttercup, you know. And I woke up every single day with a stomach issues, nausea. And granted, you know, that's kind of part of the game, I convinced myself, but it's not.
It's not at all.
It's not at all. And this seems like there's such a simplistic, through time, way of trying to attack, you know, the gut issues, as opposed to getting all these tests done. I've done the stool test, I've done the genetic test, I've done the food test. Honestly, I had swabs, and I've been prodded, and nobody gave me any of this advice that you're talking about right now. And I know damn well, because the fitness industry is just consumed with supplementation, bad food. You know, not all chicken breast is the same chicken breast. You know, same for steak, same for supplements. There's so many bodybuilders, or I just, not to put it into a pigeon group, so many fitness enthusiasts, as well as high-level competitors that are going through this and just sucking it up.
I agree. In fact, your community, I'll give them a little self-experiment that will absolutely change their life. Because of the amount of white rice, and I'm a big fan of white rice, don't get me wrong, because of the amount of white rice that a lot of bodybuilders eat, they are eating the fortified or enriched version of that white rice. It would change 0 of the caloric or nutritional value of the white rice to go to the organic version, the non-fortified, non-enriched version. So for 7 days, don't change your diet. If you eat white flour, white rice, white bread, white pasta, if you eat grains or cereals of any kind, continue to eat those. Just choose the non-fortified, non-enriched version. Like, flip the label over, and if it says fortified whole wheat or enriched bleached white flour or enriched white rice, put it back on the shelf and get the non-enriched, non-fortified version. That's the only change that I want you to make. This is why when you told me that when you moved here from your country and you came to the U.S., this is when the gut issues started. The gut issues didn't start with a food allergy or food sensitivity. The gut issues started with the introduction of folic acid to your gut. And since your body cannot process folic acid, I would bet my entire career that you have that gene mutation, MTHFR.
We need the test, Flex.
I'll bet my entire career.
We need the test.
You have it.
Well, I've got to make sure it's right, because Gary's going to lose his career.
Yeah, I will quit. If he doesn't have MTHFR, you'll never see me again.
Oh, damn.
I'll pull all the podcasts down. That's it.
But what you're describing is also like when we go to Italy and we're on vacation and we're eating pasta every day and we feel great,
fine.
and we're like, how come?
Incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you come here and you eat pasta every day and my ass jiggles for a week. Right?
Not that I'm looking at his ass, because
Ass chickles or jiggles?
Jiggle.
Both. Whatever you want to you.
If it jiggles, it's fat.
Because he has a tendency to make up words. Now I think you're making something up too.
I think you'll be making up words this whole podcast too. It sounds good though, Gary.
It does. I make up big scientific words so nobody can check them.
Yeah, exactly.
Methylene
How'd you
tetrahydrofolate
Google that?
reductase.
Just give up.
Yeah,
Just
forget
give
it.
up. Yeah.
But it's so true, man. I mean, people say it all the time. Like I eat a baguette, a sub here, with white bread, and I blow up like a tick. But I'm in France or I'm in Italy, and I eat the bread over there, and I'm fine, because the bread's not, number one, laden with seed oils, and number two, it doesn't contain folic acid. It's not sprayed with folic acid. I can't tell you what an issue this is for almost 50% of the population, and that it also causes a further deficiency in methylfolate. So if you actually supplemented with the methylated version of that, right? If you got the fortified or enriched foods out of your diet, didn't change anything else about your diet, got the fortified or enriched foods out of your diet, supplemented with methylfolate. Actually, it's called 5-MTHF, 5-methylfolate. And I tell mothers and fathers of young children that have attention deficit disorder or impulse control disorders or attention span issues, or they're fidgety or they're hyperactive, get the folic acid out of their diet for a week. Get a children's methylated multivitamin, that gummies, they make them in gummies. I mean, there are lots of great manufacturers out there. And just watch your child's behavior change in 7 days. 7 days. And I get so much flack for this online. I'm like, guys, I don't have anything to sell from this vantage point. I'm just telling you, just strip these things out of your kid's diet, the fortified or enriched foods, add a methylated gummy, a methylated multivitamin, and you tell me if you don't have an entirely different child in the house at the end of 7 days.
Yeah, and don't let them eat sugar all day either.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the sugar and the processed foods, that's a whole different ball game. But just those two things alone will, in the majority of cases, it will improve their attention span, their behavior, their everything. Because when you put compounds into their little bodies that their bodies can't process, you get the consequences of that, right? And then when they're nutrient deficient, then they actually can't, they can't function the way that they're supposed to function. So, for example, we call attention deficit disorder. We say that this is, ADD or ADHD is an attention deficit. It's actually not an attention deficit at all. It's an attention overload disorder. It's too many windows open at the same time. People that have ADD or ADHD, they don't lack the ability to pay attention. They lack the ability to pay attention to so many things. And so now we say, well, if the mind is racing, right, then let's put amphetamines into the body to race the central nervous system to match the pace of the mind. That's what Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin, that's what they are. They're amphetamines, right? So these are central nervous system stimulants. So let's take the system that's not broken and break it to match the system that is. It's kind of like getting a flat tire and then getting out and slashing your other 3 tires to create equilibrium, right? What if we did the opposite? What if we knew that attention deficit is not a deficit at all, that it's an attention overload, that the mind is so active because we are not degrading thought at the rate that we're creating thought? And what if we put the raw material into the body to break down thought? The complex of B vitamins, a specific form of vitamin B12 called methylcobalamin, and something called methylfolate, right? All over-the-counter nutrients, maybe even something called trimethylglycine. What if we put those compounds back into the human body? We actually started to break down these catecholamines. We started to quiet the neurotransmitters that are racing in the body, and our attention span returns to normal, right? Rather than becoming dependent on an amphetamine that's going to race the central nervous system, that's eventually going to break the central nervous system.
And hooked on it your entire life.
It's going to create a dependency, or it's going to create something called tachyphylaxis, a desensitization response. Why don't we just go back to the basics first? There's very little risk in giving the body the raw material it needs to do its job. So many of these miracle cures, and again, I want to emphasize, I am not licensed to practice medicine, and I don't practice medicine, but so many of the quote-unquote miracle cures that I get touted for being a part of, they're not miracle cures at all. They're just giving the body the raw material that it needs to do its job. Like, the message is not that hopeless, right? We are not as sick, we are not as diseased, we are not as pathological as we think we are. We're nutrient deficient.
Wow. I'm going to actually pick you up on that, because that I don't take Adderall.
Please don't pick me up. I know you can. You're very strong. So
I'll take you up on that offer.
Okay.
I'll suggest that information, because for me, I don't take Adderall. I definitely have been told I need it a few times, and it's not like I haven't tried it. But to your point, if I have tried it in the past, I feel like, I am a little bit more centered, but I'm also still buzzing. I'm still, all over the place. But I want to dig into that, because that's something of an interest to me. With me now doing a lot more, out of the gym stuff, podcasts, keynote speaking. There's been times where I have to get highly caffeinated or some sort of stimulant to focus myself.
Yeah.
If I could reverse that and go down, the different route where I look at what I need to take to, that's what we were talking about.
Understanding exactly what your body needs specifically. We need the test.
We need the test, yeah. And I think everybody who's listening to this podcast should, start going down this route, because we mask so much stuff in life,
we do.
Right? And with big pharma, that pill is just so accessible when you have that conversation with the doctor, when it's truly in your cupboards. It's truly in your pantry.
It is.
And it can help, over time, of course. Rome wasn't built in a day. This is all compounded through having a true version of yourself starting off day one, and then let's just say you do this for a month. Take that like realistic approach to be like, do I have more clarity? Do I have more kick to my step? Is my sleep better? Is my conversations, am I pulling the words that I'm looking for in conversations on stage, whatever it is, are they coming to my head a lot sharper?
Yeah.
And this is the interest to me now. Obviously, I'm in a different chapter in my life, but I do want to circle back because, again, our show is full of fitness enthusiasts. What would be the top 5 supplements that you would suggest for I would say, a high-performing athlete?
Okay. No question. The number one thing that I would do is I would be supplementing with a mineral salt in the morning, 10 ounces of water, first thing right out of bed. I would hydrate and mineralize the body. I use one called Baja Gold sea salt, BAJA. You could also use Celtic salt. It just doesn't have quite the same number of minerals. In terms of cost for outcome, I don't think that there's anything like my favorite biohack, like $10 or under biohack is mineral salts, because we need 91 essential minerals. The majority of us are mineral deficient. If you go back and look at that complex chart that I showed you earlier, you will see that the majority of the cofactors in there are minerals.
Interesting.
I mean, just
Flex has it memorized now.
yeah. I'm going to ask him questions about. There it is.
Yeah.
And I like that the figuring out women one. I'm going to actually use that at some point. But we're mineral deficient, and for example, there are nursing homes all over this country full of elderly men and women that have osteopenia or osteoporosis, brittle bone disease, that have been taking calcium supplements for 25 years, right? So why, if they're taking so much calcium, why don't they have strong bones? Well, because bones require 12 minerals in order to ossify, right? Bones are not just calcium. Calcium has to combine with something called phosphorus. And then when you combine calcium and phosphorus, you form something called hydroxyapatite, which actually is the density of bone. But there are 12 other minerals that are required for that. When you take just branch chain amino acids, for example, you're not actually getting the full spectrum of amino acids. You actually don't build muscle with branch chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, valine. You need actually all 8 of the essential amino acids to do that. So the first thing that I would say in terms of cost, a $10 bag of Baja Gold sea salt and taking a quarter teaspoon of that sea salt in the morning with 10 ounces of water. Don't
Lemon? Lemon in there? I do lemon in mine.
Yep.
Yeah.
You can absolutely throw lemon in there. Stir it with a wooden spoon, not a metal spoon. The metal spoon will interact with the minerals in there, and it will negate some of them. So just put it in a glass, take a quarter teaspoon, put it into you can take it with it doesn't have to be a metal, you can use a metal teaspoon to put it into the glass. But then stir it with a wooden spoon and whack it back. The second thing that I would do is I would take a full spectrum amino acid supplement. I would take a supplement with all 8 of the essential amino acids. I take one called Perfect Aminos, but you have one. I mean, as long as it has the full spectrum of essential amino acids. The majority of us are amino acid deficient. We are not protein deficient. We use protein macros to get to amino acid macros. That's really the target. We're trying to get to amino acids. We think that amino acids are proteins. They're not. They're the building blocks of proteins. And amino acids don't just build muscle. They also make our natural killer cells. They make our hair, our skin, our nails. We also can't target direct protein. We talked about this earlier. You can't take collagen and have it show up as collagen in your skin. Collagen is actually an incomplete protein. So if you want to actually build healthy hair, skin, and nails, take a full spectrum of amino acids, right? Because collagen, elastin, and fibrin are made from amino acids. So, we don't eat our nails to grow our nails. We don't eat our hair to grow our hair, but we think that we can eat collagen to grow collagen, which is not true. We want to have full spectrum of amino acids. So that would be the second thing. And then the last thing is I would get a good EPA, DHA, omega-3 supplement. You can get these from plant sources or from animal sources. Small fish are great sources, so are plant sources. But make sure it is an EPA and a DHA omega fatty acid, because all human beings need the exact same thing. We need 91 essential minerals. We need 8 essential amino acids, and we need 2 essential fatty acids. Essential means they're necessary for life. For the record, there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Okay, they are not necessary for life. I am by no means not telling people not to eat carbohydrates, but they are not essential for life. But the majority of the conditions that we see in our clinical practice, and we've treated 150,000 patients through my clinic system that I started 10 years ago. The majority of the conditions that we see stem from one of those 3 deficiencies. And then the next thing that I would do is I would militantly focus on sleep. I believe that sleep is our human superpower. If you're not sleeping, you're not, and
We're in trouble, Flex.
You're not growing. I mean,
Yeah, that's this is the conversation we need to roll into. Yeah, please.
And I really believe that the sleep is our human superpower. And there's not an entrepreneur that I ever speak to that out of the gate, I mean, if I ask them what their sleep routine is or what what their sleep hygiene is like, they have no plan for their sleep. It's astounding to me. They have a plan for their workouts. They got a plan to get their kids to school in the morning. They got a plan for the office. They got a plan for, running their business. They know their income statement, their balance sheet, their P&L. They know nothing about. They have no sleep hygiene. Meaning, what time do you go to bed? Well, whenever I get to bed. What do you do before you go to bed? I don't know. I get undressed, climb into bed. No, I mean sleep. When I started scheduling all of my meetings and travel around sleep and exercise, my entire biophysiology changed. Sleep is so important for you, especially in the bodybuilding industry. When at night is when the glymphatic system in the brain, the lymphatic system of the brain is called the glymphatic system. In deep sleep, it begins to eliminate waste, repair, detoxify, and regenerate. So the brain cleans itself during deep sleep. If you don't get adequate deep sleep, your brain gets dirty. What do I mean by dirty? It gets inflamed because you are not eliminating cellular waste from the brain. So if you want to talk about mental clarity, focus, concentration, short-term recall, you get this. The springboard is from deep sleep. All right. So I did a sleep challenge the other day. Had thousands and thousands of people participate in a sleep challenge. Whoop did it with us. We sent Whoops out to.
That's why I got the Whoop originally.
Shout out Whoop.
They're gonna love me.
We need you to sponsor the show, Whoop.
Yeah, Whoop, get in here.
That's why I originally got them, was because our sleep, and we'll go into that, but our sleep has been challenged, and we both were trying to figure it out and get better.
Yeah, that's why we got them.
I'll give you like 10 sleep hacks right now.
Let's go.
That'll and we'll go from $0 to like $15, right? But these will change your life. But we did this sleep challenge, and first of all, I love Whoop because one of the things that they do is they do a lot of research on real-time research, and when you look at clinical studies on sleep, and you take 4 or 5 people, 8 people, and you send them to the University of Miami to enroll in a sleep study, and they go into a room that's one click shy of a jail cell with some creepy dude looking at them through a two-way mirror, and you're laying on a plastic mattress with electrodes on your head and all over your chest, and then they're like, "Okay, Flex, go to sleep."
Yeah,
you're like, it's not working out too well, man. The girls are running into my head. And then we extrapolate that out to this big sleep study. But Whoop can take 10,000 people, have them opt into a sleep study, get a baseline on them after 30 days in their own environment, sleeping next to their own spouse in their own homes. And they can say, okay, here, we're going to make some changes to your sleep routine. We're going to see how that impacts your sleep. I will tell you, absolutely, 1 through 10, the most impactful things on sleep. Number 1 is alcohol. No amount of alcohol is good for sleep. 0 amount of alcohol is excellent for sleep. We did not see in our study, and it wasn't a published peer-reviewed study, but we did not see a single person who had even as little as a single drink before bedtime not have sleep disruption. So if you really want to be sleeping well, eliminate the alcohol. The second one is to stop eating 2 hours before bedtime. And I know for a lot of people that's tough.
Bodybuilders.
Bodybuilders is very, very tough. Stop eating 2 hours before bedtime. If not, then consume your calories in liquids if possible before bedtime. This will be a lot easier on your system. And this is for a number of things. It diverts oxygen to the gut. Raises your blood sugar at night, which actually is stimulatory and wakes you up and interrupts the cortisol melatonin cycle. So stop eating 2 hours before bedtime. Surgically darken the room. And when I say surgically darken the room, I mean like stand in your room with all the lights out and try to find something that is emanating light. If there's a fire extinguisher, put a black piece of tape over the little blue light. If you've got an alarm clock on the desk, throw a pair of towel or a pair of pants over it. Surgically darken the room. Drop the screen time in bed, which is really hard for people. Cool the room down 2 degrees. Do a contrast shower before bed. A lot of people, when they lay down to go to sleep at night, they are body tired but mind awake. Mm-hmm. So they lay down to go to sleep, their body's exhausted, but their mind starts to race. This is a rise in catecholamines. I mean, a game changer for people if they do the genetic test that we're talking about is they'll see that they have a gene mutation called COMT, C-O-M-T. It is what happens is when they lay down to go to bed at night, As their environment quiets, their mind wakes up. And if you actually ask them, what kind of things are you thinking about? They'll tell you it's the most innocuous little nonsense. I'm thinking about whether or not I got everything on my grocery list, if my belt matched my shoes today, if I returned that email, if I posted that thing on Instagram, nothing that couldn't wait till the next day.
And the whoop, and to the point, like I noticed that my stress spike happens right at bed. Like I think he's the same exact way. Everything we're talking about right now is exactly what I've been dealing with, where at bed at night, I'm thinking about my to-do list. I'm thinking about a lot of different things. I tried to start journaling and some other things to kind of help that. But I noticed that even on my Whoop, it would show like right before bed, boom, I'm starting to spike up.
So try this tonight. Do a contrast shower. So get in the shower right before you go to bed. Run the shower for about 2 minutes, as hot as you can stand it. Really stand under really, really, really warm water, hot water if you can stand it. And then for the last minute, turn the shower as cold as it will go. And don't stay in for more than 1 minute, right? What this will do is break the catecholamine cycle. So the heat and cold contrast actually will help you downregulate these catecholamines and quiet the mind. You will dry off and you will lay in bed, and as your body temperature returns to normal, it will quiet the catecholamines. I have no affiliation with this supplement company at all, but I'm just telling you, I've seen it work miracles in people's sleep, including my own. I take a supplement called Magnesium Breakthrough. It's I think it's by Biooptimizers, and all it is the 7 forms of magnesium, because magnesium doesn't just come in one form; it comes in 6 or 7 different forms. So this has all 7, and I take that magnesium at night along with a sleep formula. It is non-tranquilitic. It doesn't build a tolerance. It doesn't create tachyphylaxis. Magnesium is one of the most deficient minerals in the human body, and you will wake up. You will not only sleep better, deeper, and have more REM and deep sleep, but you will have a bowel movement straight out of bed first thing in the morning, which is another thing that most people are not doing. Yeah. And if you don't have a regular bowel movement in roughly the same time, I know another one of those topics people don't like to talk about, but if you're not waking up and having a bowel movement within the first hour of being out of bed, that is a terrible sign. Right? Yeah. Terrible sign that you're not eliminating waste or absorbing nutrients at the proper pace.
Yeah, you want to be a regular kind of guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Coffee does make me poop, or maybe
it does. Does it? Have your coffee and then out it goes. Yeah, I mean, stimulants.
Alexis, are you putting my shopping list together with all these supplements? Okay, good. I'm making sure that I'm staying.
And listen, I shout my competitors out all the time. People are like, he's just on there to sell something. I'm actually selling stuff I don't have an affiliate link with. Is driving to my competitors because I think that they.
I will say that though, just on that note, we spoke on camera and off camera, and you told me about a lot of different companies that you've promote. Not because you have affiliation, you talk about because the quality of the supplement or the product in itself. Talking of which, you've got this little gizmo next to you, which what I seen you putting this on. I didn't we have a chance to talk about it, but look at that. First of all, I thought it was a water bong. I thought Gary was going to water bong in the middle of the show.
Yeah, water bong. Well, that says a lot about you.
Yeah, hey, listen,
spark it up.
No, but so what is the difference? Tell us. Look at him. He's just going to morph into Hulk now.
It's hydrogen. Hydrogen water is by far the most beneficial water you can put in the human body. Full stop. End of story. Again, I get a lot of flack about this too. There is a website. I think you even pulled it up. Hydrogenstudies.com. So don't take my word for it. Go to hydrogenstudies.com.
Hydrogenstudies.com.
There's about go to see all studies. So you can go there to see all studies. You'll see there's about 1,335 peer-reviewed studies on this site. Not all of them are specific to hydrogen water. Some are specific to hydrogen gas. I'm also a huge fan of hydrogen gas. You can actually bathe in hydrogen gas too. I mean, you want to talk about a recovery tool. Knees, hips, shoulders, rotator cuff, any kind of inflammation, arthritis. You can bathe in hydrogen water. If you have any kind of skin condition, scleroderma, psoriasis, eczema, just Google hydrogen gas and scleroderma, hydrogen gas and psoriasis or eczema. You will be astounded at what you can do by using this harmless gas to enhance your physiology. This one is called an Echo. I happen to love this company because they had the highest parts per million that I tested. There are all these fake Chinese water bottles out there. You could also use hydrogen tablets, if you didn't want to spring for a hydrogen water bottle. But this will negate all the effects of travel. It will reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. It'll improve the absorption of your vitamins, minerals, amino acids, all the nutrients that are passing through your gut. It provides the hydrogen gas that a whole class of bacteria in your gut require. And if you deselect out the animal studies and just look at the human studies on this site, you'll just be astounded. You'll be like, where has hydrogen water been all my life? It is by far the most beneficial, liquid hack that you can use in the body. Just try drinking hydrogen water for a week.
What is it that you get from that?
So it adds hydrogen gas to the water, right? And hydrogen gas is harmless to human beings. I mean, the majority, we're actually 60, I forget what exact percentage hydrogen by weight. H2O has 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. So very often when we talk about whether or not something is an antioxidant, right? It neutralizes free radicals. It is donating electrons to neutralize a free radical. So you get a lot of what's called negative ORP, negative oxidative reduction potential. When you look at the potential for something to reduce oxidation, or the potential for something to reduce inflammation or reduce free radicals, you measure this by something called negative ORP, the negative oxidative reduction potential. If you look at tap water, it has a positive ORP, which means it is pro-inflammatory. If you look at hydrogen water, it has a negative 600 ORP. So this means it has hundreds of times more potential to reduce inflammation than tap water. I mean, first of all, I think that the first thing anybody should do is never drink tap water again.
Makes the frogs gay.
Tap water
Makes the frogs
it doesn't
gay.
Make them gay. Change their sex. Like, I don't know if that men start to like men, but
I've seen this
women.
a couple times now.
J-Rock, it's
I've
spreading
seen it.
false
No,
information.
it's because
Hold
they
on.
it's because a male becomes a female. So I mean, technically, it's not gay because then it likes male.
I'm with Gary.
But something weird happens. It's the quote. It's the Alex Jones quote. That's what he said.
Anyways,
Dude, the woke mob is
he's trying.
he just got censored.
But
We'll never
regardless,
see him
it's not
again.
good.
That
Regardless-
podcast is going so well, and now we just got freaking taken
Regardless,
off.
it's not good for you. Don't drink tap water.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
absolutely.
So look at him trying to save the day back.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, it's the fluoride and the chlorine. You know, fluoride. Most people don't even realize where fluoride comes from. Fluoride is fluorosilicic acid. Fluoride is the byproduct of industrial fertilizer production. It's the waste product from industrial phosphate fertilizer production. So when we make hundreds of millions of metric tons of phosphate fertilizer, which we use all over this country in agriculture, there's a waste product. We have to take the fluorosilicic acid out because this actually kills the plant, and so we don't want to use fertilizer that kills the plant, so we take the toxic byproduct out. Well, that toxic byproduct, fluorosilicic acid, is then what we put into the municipal water supply as fluoride. And if you look at the 2023 National Toxicology Program, so you can Google National Toxicology Program fluoride study. Just Google that, and you'll see that in all of the municipalities, with very few exceptions, there may have been 4 or 5 municipalities that they didn't find this in the more than 3,500 municipalities where they studied the water quality. They found an inverse relationship between fluoride and IQ. So this means as fluoride went up, IQ went down.
Just talking about it on this study, right? Yeah, right.
There it is. Is that the National Toxicology Program? Yeah. So somewhere there, it's going to, fluoride exposure, neural development, and cognition. Okay. Yeah. Fluoride, fluorosilicic acid, is a neurotoxin. Right? If you look at the label on your toothpaste, if you have Crest or Colgate or any other toothpaste that has fluoride in it, just flip the toothpaste over, and by law, there's a warning on the back of that label that says, if more than necessary for toothbrushing is swallowed, contact poison control immediately. Literally says, if you swallow the toothpaste, contact poison control. But the amount of fluoride you would swallow in 2 or 3 times the amount that you would use to brush your teeth is a fraction of what you would drink in a normal day if you just drank tap water. Wow. So why don't we call poison control when we're done drinking tap water at the end of the day? only if we swallow it with, fluoride toothpaste. So you get a toothpaste that has hydroxyapatite. If you're looking for a fluoride alternative, get toothpaste that have hydroxyapatite, and you can get the fluoride out of your toothpaste, and you can also remineralize the enamel of the tooth, which is what we're trying to do with fluoride. But when we ingest high amounts of fluoride, this is a neurotoxin. It affects, especially in prepubescent teens. It's just another one of those chemical salts that we put on the body. So I would not only filter my water, I would, if you're really looking for the best biohack, I would be drinking hydrogen-rich water. The reason why I love this thing is because it's just a battery-operated thing. I take it on every flight that I go on, and I just hit the button, and it puts the hydrogen gas into the water, and then you drink.
What is that one called again?
Echo, ECHO. There's a ton of Chinese fakes out there. As soon as you see one that's in glass, run. And that doesn't have the tensile strength to hold the hydrogen gas. It takes a lot of pressure to create that gas. It has to be something called Triton plastic, which is a BPA-free plastic that doesn't leach bisphenols. But this is one of those products that I found, and I was like, these guys deserve a voice.
What is that brand called?
Echo.
Echo. Okay.
Echo water.
I don't, go on.
I was going to say, I didn't want to go off the water, but I can't help but think to myself, right? Because we sit here and we're talking about all these poisons. We're sitting here about bobbing and weaving everything that's around us, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to change. As you said, it's a pandemic of health in our country. And I know for me, politics aside, seeing RFK going forward in this Maha, making... That's what I was going to ask you about, right? Yeah. Because it's the first time I've seen this being actually addressed, and someone who's like, that's what I'm coming in here to do. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Well, I plan, to personally play a big part in that if the Trump administration is successful in winning the election. And that's not to make a political statement at all. I mean, if we can't agree on getting the poison and toxins out of our food supply, then there's nothing. I don't.
It's not a red.
Agree.
It's not a red-blue issue. It's an all of our human issue.
Yeah. I mean, we have the highest rate of childhood cancer right now. We have the highest rate of autism. We have the highest rate of ADD, ADHD, OCD, and manic depression. We have the highest rate of teen suicide. If we cannot begin to address the toxic soup that our children are bathing in, then we will never not only fix the pandemic of chronic disease in this country, but we will never face and correct the corruption in our food supply. I mean, there's no reason why the majority of the funding for our National Institute of Health should come from big food. Right. There's no reason why Big Pharma should be able to have 5 lobbyists for every single member of Congress. There's no reason why we should be able to advertise directly to consumers pharmaceutical products when the consumer is not even responsible for the choice of whether or not they can put that product into their body. Right. That's done by a physician. I mean, so advertise directly to the physician. If we were able to get the corruption, in my opinion, out of the food supply. If you look at the cozy relationship between Big Pharma and the FDA, the cozy relationship between big food and our and the majority of nutritional research in this country, I mean, this is what led to the food pyramid. We need to actually put the food pyramid.
What a joke.
Dude.
Right, Lucky
what a
Charms.
joke.
And you got
Lucky
your boy
Charms over steak.
Yeah, you know who else is close in there is Bill Gates, right? And he's pushing
not
forward
close on my team.
Yeah, you were definitely trying to suppress this podcast.
Dude.
No, but with that said, though, we have to start looking at who is the health ministers. Not
have you seen
in
our
this
health
country.
minister?
My
You actually seen our health minister?
Have you seen the health minister and then the health ministers across the world? Yeah. It's like, how can you have a health minister telling everybody to XYZ when they're not even in shape or even look like they even train or attempt to eat in shape?
They're the same people telling you to eat Fruity Pebbles every morning.
Because it's top of the food channel.
It's better for you than meat.
Because it's top of the food channel.
We've had such a war on fat. We've had such a war on cholesterol. We've actually had such a war on whole foods. I mean, now that they're saying that having children is stressful, having your own home garden is adding to greenhouse emissions, that cow farts are actually responsible.
My
cow farts.
There she is.
There she
he
is.
Well, they're taking away all of our farms.
I kept confused. 1 minute it's one, when it's the other. Either way, politically, she, his, I don't know. All these terminologies these days. I'm the podcast host. I can say what I want. You guys can just mumble in the background. But to the point is, that is who is leading the front.
Yes, that's who's leading the front, and
we need a change.
Yeah, we need a change, and we need to. I did a podcast with Callie Means, which if you don't watch any other podcasts on The Ultimate Human, please watch the Callie Means podcast, because this is a brother and sister. He was a believe he graduated from Harvard and was a lobbyist for big food, big pharma, and she's a Stanford-trained head and neck surgeon. And they both essentially came to the same epiphany at the same time, that if we don't fix the toxic soup that our biology is bathing in and fix the corrupt food system, then we will never fix the pandemic of chronic disease. You know, when autism has gone from 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 36 children, and they believe that it'll be 1 in 5.
Yeah, I've seen it.
30 years.
When the rates of cancer are almost 50%, and we have the highest rates of childhood cancer, when we have a pandemic of mental illness, in my opinion, we have a lack of mental fitness, not a pandemic of mental illness, then we have got to put nutrients back into the human body. You know, the public school system is thinking of carte blanche going to Lunchables. To feed these kids. This
It's such a major problem. Is it the school
fortified
lunches?
rich dough and
Yeah.
corn syrups and
Pizza,
food.
like, you know, burgers. That's what we got as kids in our schools. Right?
And it's not just to create fear. You know, I do this thing on my Instagram called lateral shifts, where I take any food that anyone that somebody likes to eat, and I call it a lateral shift. I will promise them 2 things. One, I will shift it to something that tastes exactly the same. They will not deny the choice that I give them because of taste. And the second thing is, I won't add a dime to their budget. And it's astounding that when you go into people's cabinets or the refrigerator, and a lot of people just really don't know, what choice can I make? And so, you open up the refrigerator and you see, okay, well, what do you like to eat in here? I like to eat this, Dannon with yogurt with fruit on the bottom. Okay, well, let's look at that. That's got 54 grams of sugar. You see this word here that says artificial fruit flavoring? That's code word for ain't got no fruit. So
I'm going to use that.
Yeah, ain't got no fruit. And then you see these food dyes. Red dye number 40, blue dye number 9, yellow dye number 60.
Poisons.
Okay, these are they kill the microbiotics. So they're bactericidal. So if you're eating this because you think it has probiotics, those probiotics have been killed by the food dye. So now this has no probiotics, 54 grams of sugar, no fruit, even though it says artificial fruit flavoring. It tastes like blueberry. So which one do you like? You like the blueberry? Okay, so now we're going to go to the grocery store. We're going to buy whole fat Greek yogurt. Please stop being afraid of fat. Whole fat Greek yogurt. We're going to buy we're going to buy a little basket of organic blueberries and some monk fruit. And you're going to take the whole fat Greek yogurt, put it in a bowl, throw in a fistful of blueberries, and take a teaspoon of monk fruit and mix it up. You tell me if you can tell the difference. And now we've just significantly upped the nutritional value, haven't changed the taste, actually reduced the cost because I buy the yogurt by the quart and not buy these individual packs that they charge a lot for. So you've reduced your budget, you've significantly increased the nutritional value of it. It's going to be more satiating because you're going to eat less. And you're doing just a lot for your cellular biology. And if we just go food by food like this, I try to give a voice to a lot of food products that are like there's a like a tortilla chip called masa chips, which is just organic, non-GMO corn, grass-fed beef tallow, and sea salt. That's it. It's better than any Dorito you'll ever eat in your life. And you look at the back of a bag of Doritos, besides the MSG and the food dyes and the sodium, I mean, it's genetically modified corn. I mean, it's not even a food.
Yeah. And I think that's true for a lot of foods. Like, and I always pick up my labels, and like, if you see more than 5 ingredients, then it's probably bad.
Yeah. My house.
It's like...
In my wife's a registered dietitian. So she
is? Okay,
so my house has got all healthy snacks. My kids eat all whole foods. You know how
Great.
good my kids have. My kids prefer water. They don't even know what diet drinks are, sodas and stuff. My daughter might have had one and she'll brag about it, tell me she's she told me, I came home yesterday from a speaking engagement. She said, Daddy, I had a Diet Coke yesterday. And I was like, cool, you won't see one for a long time either.
That was not me when I was a kid. I was like on my
Hang your
4th
head
pop.
in shame.
Yeah.
But
that's
I was like on my 4th pop a day. It's like we didn't have any information,
man. I mean, I still remember getting ready to go to the bus, and my mom would always, because I would try to pick the marshmallows out of the bowl, and she would make me eat how much she loved me. She'd make me eat all the cereal. And it was the big, like the whole skim milk thing. We had skim milk, Lucky Charms, and I would take the Lucky Charms out and line them up on the counter, and I would eat the cereal first just to get it over with, and then I would eat the marshmallows.
Yeah.
But and I think back, the food dyes and everything. It's the messaging to the masses needs to change. And all you really need to do is go to Disney World or Universal Studios and take a walk right through the center of Disney World to see what trouble we are in. You know, you want to see a slice out of middle class America, just go to Disney World.
Yeah.
And you could see the trilogy. You know, grandma's in a motorized wheelchair with a 2-liter thing of soda in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
You know, mom's waddling behind with a fanny pack because she can't put her hands in her pockets, right? So everything's in a fanny pack, and then this, you know, obese, prepubescent child is walking behind them, and you see them. They got a 64-ounce Big Gulp in their hand. They got a funnel cake in the other hand, and you go, man, that's just deep fried white flour in seed oil sprinkled with sugar.
Terrible.
And you 5 cans of soda. I mean, it's insane. That kid doesn't have a chance.
No.
And I think that, you know, it really needs to be a top-down approach. And if I'm ever blessed enough to have a role, you know, with RFK and some of the really brilliant minds that are addressing these issues with the food supply, then I'm going to do everything I can to get that message out.
That element of things, and I was speaking to the guys before we started this podcast today, and we spoke about it, you know, last week sometime, but J-Rock's friends with RFK Jr. So he and I we're trying to get him. We're trying to get him on the podcast because we align with a lot of his stuff that he's been speaking about.
Super aligned with him.
And you know, with him going in with this plan of attack, that is something of a massive interest to me. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger a number of years ago done what was it called again, Tyus? The Presidential
Physical Fitness Awards.
Yeah, and
awesome.
Remember he done that before he got into the politics. I would love to find my way in a role where I can get in front of just gen pop and just break down certain things. You know, be the middle guy between somebody like yourself and the general public.
Yeah.
So I could speak to them and educate them in maybe, you know, again, more of a understandable level. You know, because obviously you can do that too. But where I'm at right now, I have this draw to get involved with the general public and just break these perceptions and these ideologies that they've learned from, you know, again, the people who are paying all the ads.
Yeah,
right. They want to keep them sick. They want to keep them fat. They want to keep them obese.
Yeah. They make money. They make a lot of money doing that.
Yeah, they do. But I mean, as a statement of fact, I mean, the most profitable thing for Big Pharma is a sick child. Just as a statement of fact.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Gary, I know we are over the time of the podcast.
Are we? Okay.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it. And
I got one more, Flex.
I got one more too.
Story.
But you can. Okay. Oh, yeah, I know this. Okay.
Personal story.
Do you want to end with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll leave you with that.
All right.
The only reason because, Gary, when you and I met in Utah with our boy Keaton at Limitless, you had just flown from Dubai. I think you seen your client over there, if you don't mind me name dropping, Ronaldo.
No problem. Yes.
And Gary was telling me when he landed that he had, even though he was on the edge of his seat for 3 or 4 days, running here, running there, he still was hitting 100% on his sleep score. I was blown away.
Wow.
I was posting him on that.
Yes.
Dude.
And then he showed me, and I was following and watching.
We're so far away from that.
So I'm 50%. But the protocol that Gary does on the road, I just want to let the fans and the viewers know this. Wherever he travels to, it doesn't stop. Like even on the plane, Gary was putting his your PEMF mat down to sleep, and you documented from the time that you left Dubai to the time you landed, and you showed your sleep score 100%.
Yeah.
Your
habits are everything.
Yes, habits are everything, and I just want to commend you on that too. This is not just something that you talk from a podcast. You live the life truly, and you've got the stats, and you show it on your Instagram, and privately so. The PEMF mat. I know I should have brought this up earlier in the podcast, but I'm very interested in that. That is something I've not done, but you have been talking about this more, or maybe I know I've heard it. I'm hearing it more from you, but you were one of the only guys, to my knowledge, in my circle of circles that are talking about this PEMF mat. So what is it?
You know, every one of the professional athletes that I work with, all of what I would call the superhuman athletes that I work with, I all have them using a PEMF mat. So let me preface it by saying that you can get very similar results by taking your shoes off and touching the surface of the earth. Earthing and grounding is a very real thing. We discharge into the earth. The earth has a magnetic field. It's called a low Gauss current. This is a measurable field. You can actually look at your cellular biology pre and post touching the surface of the earth, and you can see dynamic changes even in your blood chemistry before and after touching the surface of the earth. So I want to preface this by saying that because my intention is not to just sell a bunch of PEMF mats. If you have the budget for it, however, you can buy a pulse electromagnetic field mat, PEMF mat, which mimics the current from the surface of the earth, this PEMF field. I have one down the center of my bed. It gets both my wife and I. It goes out about 6 feet in either direction. I run it for 30 minutes before I go to sleep at night. You will wake up alkaline every morning, because remember, pH stands for potential hydrogen. It's the potential of hydrogen. It's a charge. pH is a charge. You cannot change the charge in the body by drinking alkaline water, right? So that essential water is it's great that it's essential water, but it won't change the pH of the blood, right? That's the biggest fallacy ever sold to the public. If you want to change the charge in the body, you run a low Gauss current through the body. So I think it's one of the most prolific things you can do for longevity, for anti-aging, for people that are really into biooptimization, for cellular repair, to restoring what's called vasomotor activity in the body, the microvascular circulation in the body, which, by the way, is 70% of our circulation. 70% of the circulation in the human body is not done by the heart. The heart cannot reach 70% of our circulatory system. It shocks people when I say that, but it's patently true. The 70% of our circulation is done by something called the vasomotor. It's a peristaltic wave-like motion. It's like a snake swallowing a mouse. So the PEMF is very good for vasomotor activity. If you are a bodybuilder, if you're an athlete, if you put a lot of stress on your body, pulse electromagnetic field could be one of the best things that you do. They're not inexpensive. They're a few $1,000. But again, as soon as, in my opinion, as soon as you become marginally successful in life, you should start reinvesting back into your health, right? I mean, like I have a red light therapy bed. It's a full body red light therapy bed. It's $120,000. I don't expect anyone to buy a $120,000 bed. But if you're going to buy a Ferrari, buy a red light therapy bed before you actually invest in a Ferrari. That Ferrari will do nothing for your cellular biology.
Wow.
That red light therapy bed will do enormous things for you.
Might get you laid.
Yeah, the Ferrari might get you laid. I don't know. You
I'm
bring
just
a chick
saying.
over to your place.
You got to look at the positive,
The
Flex.
red light
Okay.
therapy.
Open the curtain and see the red light coming through. Is like in Amsterdam or something.
I don't know if red light therapy ever got you laid, but no, I'm just kidding.
That's very,
So, yeah.
well.
PEMF med is I'm a huge fan of. PEMF.
Okay. Well, Mr. J Rock, you can land the show with your last story.
All right. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, and I think it's kind of a well-known fact now that you did save Dana White's health and his life, but you did also ruin his wardrobe.
I did.
And so when I say that, so I have I'm a co-owner of a suit store at the Cosmopolitan called Stitched. And at the
I just got a suit there yesterday.
That's his place.
Stitch.
What?
That's his.
That's your place?
That's his place.
Dude, they just made me a suit yesterday. I literally got, and I got.
I love it.
In fact, these are from Stitched. I bought these yesterday.
Those are the best
guys.
pants. Those are the pants I keep trying to tell you to get because they're so comfortable.
Yes, and they're stretchy.
Oh God,
I tell everybody.
Dude, it's
so
that's right next to the little.
Yeah.
That's his place.
Our air conditioner wasn't working though. Just
Great store. AC's down.
92 degrees in there.
man.
I kid you not.
So
We'll cut that part of the show.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
so
Put Tyson's like no.
during the period of time where Dana White met Gary Brecka, he's just cutting weight like nobody's business. I mean, so we were doing custom suits, so we had him measured, and like we had to, we go back, and it's like, he dropped 20 pounds, and it was like, I think I'm done. We come back a few weeks later, dropped another 38 pounds, lost 4 inches off my waist, and we're like, and this is a moving target.
Yeah.
And as you know, with custom clothing, you got to be exact. So end up 4 or 5 times later, we finally got it on the 6th one.
It wasn't a complete new suit that you had.
That's job security for you, dude.
Yeah.
I feel like I should get 15%. Don't you think?
We'll talk. We'll talk after the show.
Yeah.
I'll squeeze 60.
Oh, yeah. And now that I know you
Lex
win.
is going to be my business manager. He heard about products I'm promoting. He's like, "Do you have equity in that product?" You better like.
I did.
He's like, "You better have that."
No, but after the show, we will talk about Guardian Stitch, no question.
Yes,
But
yes.
the fact that you're wearing the pants now is so funny. Again,
love it.
small world,
And I
right?
literally had a suit delivered. It was on the pool table in the
We got to get you the Lycra
Wait.
shirts, too.
Wait a minute.
Those are where I always get him in.
The gentleman when I was doing your voice note, I don't know if you heard the voice note. There's a guy that walked past with a suit jacket. I mean, the Stitch cover over the suits, and I said, "Oh, nice suit, mate." And I go and I speaking to you, and I said, "I just walked past somebody that has your brand, mate."
going up to my.
And he was going to your
Yeah.
Yes.
freaking A.
Dropped
Look at
4
this.
grand
All
there
circular.
yesterday, dude.
Wow.
I did.
Well, I appreciate that, and I definitely can't wait to go to the store with you and get some good gear. Me and Flex get in there every once in a while. We owe a little private shopping.
Yeah, he's got a couple of places. He's got one warehouse that's not open to the public, and it's we go in there, lock the door. He brings the
we call
stylist in.
It's unstitched, and it's our warehouse, but we turned it into a real store, and everything we put out is couture. So like if it doesn't sell in the season, we take it off, and it's in there. So you're getting something brand new. So we could actually set up a nice little private shopping for all of us. It'd be great.
All about it.
Well, Gary, I think me and you, we're not shy of words, my friend.
Indeed.
I think that this has been the podcast that our guest has spoken more than anybody, and in the best way possible. The information and the knowledge that has come through our years and through, for your guys wherever you are around the world has been incredible, mate. Honestly, I truly appreciate you. You're a wealth of knowledge. I know
very much.
We will do another episode because there's so many notes that I've put in you and questions along with you. I know because we were putting our head into the show, and mate, you just went from topic to topic with. Again, no prompts.
A lot of value. A lot of value out of this podcast, guys. A lot of value.
A lot of value. So we're time stamping this, guys. So make sure that you bookmark whatever you want from this because we've covered through so many different things. And again, Gary, mate, I truly appreciate you and all you've done for so many of our mutual friends.
Yeah.
There's so many celebrity friends that are kind of stuck in their ways, right? Whether it's ego or whatever else. I've hired this person before, nothing. You've gone in, and however you've done it, you've been able to infiltrate their mindsets. And there's a lot of big names that you're working with.
Yes.
And change their lives. And everybody was crossed the path with Gary, who is working with Gary, all have said, you have changed my life. And that has got to be incredible, my friend. And we're just talking about the people we know, let alone from the tens of thousands of other people you've been able to change their lives on. And all the millions around the world that have taken knowledge, such as J-Rock and myself, tidbits here or there, and the fans that are watching around the world that put it into their lives, that have felt a little bit better or truly changed their mindset on whatever it could be. So I want to just say thank you from us and thank you for all the fans that are watching you. And I look forward to have you back.
I love getting the message out, man. Thank you for giving me the platform.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
This is Flex.
It's Rock.
This is Gary.
Oh, yeah. We are out.
Yeah.